Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the next episode of Ask UX Experts. And this is Anudeep Ayagari, a UX designer from Amazon. But yeah, like in every episode, we are bringing you a UX expert, someone whom you can ask questions, who can listen to the story, relate, and do whatever. This is like your call, right? So without wasting a lot of time, let me introduce the guest of today's episode. That is Anurag. So hey
Hello
Anurag,
everyone.
hi. So
Hello.
yeah, so all of you, as tell who Anurag is, keeps doing Anurag OP on the chat. So Anurag is like a senior UX design, senior product designer at Uber, and he was like with Uber like last 4 years. That's a lot of time. He has been like doing Uber Lite, Uber Bus, and all these things. And before that, he was with Twitter. So such great names on the portfolio over there. And on the other side, Anurag also speaks about his food business on Instagram. I'm definitely sure we'll hear a lot about that. This is me telling about Anurag. So before I speak more than this, let's hear from Anurag himself about. So Anurag, please give us a small intro about you and yeah.
Great. Thank you, Anudeep, for this
Anurag OP
intro.
on the chat, everyone, as Anurag speaks. Come on, welcome him with Anurag OP.
Hello, everyone. Kudos to all of you who joined at this time. I was asking Anudeep, oh, yeah, this is definitely an interesting time to join, like at 9:30 p.m. and we go on till 11. So I hope I don't bore you guys. I am Anurag. I am a senior product designer at Uber. I joined Uber almost 4 years back. And I worked on the design of Uber Lite, and then I worked on the design on Uber Bus. Now I'm kind of looking at redesigning, sign in and sign up for Uber. Before Uber, I was, with Twitter, where I was responsible for designing m.twitter. I also have another site to myself. I'm pretty deeply into food, where I run like a food business on the side, where I do pop-ups, on my terrace sometimes, or in a cafe. Of course, in COVID we couldn't do it, so in COVID I did a lot of like takeaway food. So yeah, that's briefly about me.
Awesome, awesome. So, having heard a quick intro to who you are, let's. Why don't we just understand about your journey, right? Your journey into UX design, or more about you as a person and stuff like that. So, think as if yeah, basically talk in terms of how people can relate to themselves in their situations now, because we all were or are also in multiple ways. So from there, how did your journey into whatever you are today happen, and still how can people relate with you? So
God, yeah. I
please.
can probably I can probably take like a long answer on this one.
Definitely,
Uh,
definitely. Go ahead.
like I kind of like finished 10 plus 2, so I'm going to start probably there. And I didn't know what to do, so I took up engineering, as so many of us do. I didn't know much about engineering. I wasn't really an engineer. I was just chilling. I was just chilling at the school at the time, for all 4 years, to be honest. But I was slowly getting inclined towards design. I started doing some graphic design, as a freelance or on the side sometimes, only until a point where like a major newspaper covered me because I designed, something for traffic police in Chandigarh. So I'm from Punjab. And when that happened, I felt like, oh, like no one, no one gives a shit that, I am an engineer, but like someone is definitely giving a shit that I'm, I'm, designing something. So that was kind of like a way where point where I felt like maybe there is something here. And then I started researching about design, and funnily enough, because we got that thing printed, for Chandigarh, and I was there. I thought that's what designers do. You sit on a print shop and like on the side, and you are on a computer doing your thing. And then I asked them, I'm like, hey, like, how much do you get paid? Like a very bland question, because I was like, at least I want to know if there's a career. He's like, sir, 20,000 types per month. I was like, okay, cool. Looks like a feasible career, I guess. And only until a point where one of my friends told me that there's a legit design career also, which I don't know about. And there were NIDs and IITs of the world where you can actually study design. So I started preparing for that right off out of engineering. My last semester was supposed to be an internship. I didn't do it. I just faked it. I hope no one is I hope no one who is responsible is actually listening. But I faked that one. I studied and I basically prepared, made like a huge portfolio. Applied for IIT, applied for NID. I was lucky enough to get into NID in Bangalore, and I
Oh,
studied interaction design. Well, I didn't know much about interaction design. I knew a bit. It was up and coming. You know what I mean? Like websites were happening at the time. I'm not that old, but like let's say it was 7 years ago. So of course, phones were like still becoming a thing at the time. So
correct.
I tried that. Only after joining I realized like what all of it is about, right? And I got very very interested. NID is an amazing place. We learned a lot from just each other. So I think whenever we talk about school, it's more about peer learning, as a point, and rather than being in that environment. So the fact that Anudeep is talking, I think you did a thing last week or something, and the fact that you brought me on board, and like we are talking and we are basically discussing. I think that's what education is to me. So that's what happened. I think we basically learned a lot. I was also lucky to be do like a foreign exchange for 4 months. And of course, it's how do I put it? It's not like the school was different, but again, like I think just going abroad is a different exposure. It opens up how you think it when you look at other designers doing other things. I think it's just changes some perspective in a way, right? So that happened. I came back. I joined Microsoft for internship. Pretty good place. It's almost like an institute, I would say. We did like a 6 month internship where I think they have a rigorous process of like reviewing your work and giving you work that makes sense. And I think I learned a lot in that time. So it was definitely 6 months of that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then after that, what really happened is like I took out and started looking for jobs. We did have placements in place, but I kind of wanted, by that time, I think I'd read enough blogs and I was like, I want to be in a certain kind of a place where design process is respected. Twitter was coming to India at the time. And I think I probably spammed everyone who had joined Twitter in India. So I think I messaged one of them replied like, "Hey, would you like to come see me in the office?" And then I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then, I met them. They liked my energy. They were looking at a senior person. I was just fresh out of college, hadn't worked at all in any place at all. But I think they liked my energy and they were like, okay, fine. I mean, we'll hire you. You're not the lead. We're still looking for a lead, but like, we'll hire you and then figure out how to do a lead. We don't want to lose you since we like you. So I think that worked in my favor and also against my favor, right? Like, I think um, I probably would say everyone when they are getting out of school, they should probably work in a place where there are more people that you can learn from. I was like there trying to chart my own path. First 6 months were very difficult, but I think at the it took some time for me to learn how things work in the real world, right?
Mm.
Because really what happens in school is very different, and what happens in the real world is super different. So
Correct.
it took me a lot of time to get used to that. Luckily, we had access to people in the design team in the US in Twitter. So I found some mentors. and they helped me shape my process. And I think my the second 6 months at Twitter were really good. We got this project where we worked on m.twitter. So
Okay.
if you open m.twitter on mobile, I think of course they keep changing, but still some parts of it are still something that I designed, which I can probably say for sure. Um, and then I think they were not able to expand the team, in India. So I just felt like, my learning is, basically almost coming to end at the start of my career.
Mhm.
And there were only two options: either I move out of India with Twitter to like London, I guess, or I stay there. And I carved out a third option, which was just looking out for another place.
Got
And I think Uber was had just come to India, very similar situation again. But
Okay.
this time they reached out to me, and they were like, "Hey, we have heard about you from some people, and would love to see if you want to explore a role." And again,
Okay.
they were also looking for the first designer, but now again, I'm now a better designer. So interviews went well. I joined Uber. My first year was designing payments at Uber, and it was basically we were launching across the world at that time. And
Okay.
if you go to Singapore, there's a different payment method, and if you go to Thailand, there's a different payment method. So
Okay.
my work was basically just looking at designing payment methods. It wasn't the best work, but I was traveling a lot. So if we were, let's say, designing something in Thailand, we will be in Thailand, which is amazing. So I was like,
Okay.
I was like,
That's
you know,
something. Uh, it's something you should read. But yeah, we'll hear more. But yeah, you complete.
I know. So from designing like something like m.twitter, which is like a mammoth of complexity, to like designing payment methods, I was like, this is not the best work, but I am still in flights, and my other kind of education is happening where I'm like traveling, which was great. Uh,
Yeah.
so I just kept going. But I think my second year at Uber is when my work started becoming much much better. So we
Mhm.
started this team called Global Rider Access,
Okay.
and Global Rider Access was more about designing for next set of riders for Uber. So imagine that like you are looking at how do you design for the emerging world, right, or the emerging markets of the world. So take India, take Brazil, take Mexico, all these places, and I think some of the solutions that we made were amazing. Like we did m.uber, which is a mobile way to request an Uber. Then we
Okay.
did Uber Lite, which is probably one of the craziest projects I've worked on because it was like a redesign of Uber, right? Like we said we don't want maps. Now Uber is something that started maps, and we are like as a design team, like no, we are gonna get rid of maps because our users don't understand it.
Got it.
So it was a crazy project and a lot of like design intensive, research intensive sort of a project. Um, and then I went on to Uber Bus, which is very similar to Shuttle we have in India. We kind of did a similar thing in Egypt, where there's a bus of like 10 or 12 people. We take it to them to like a particular place, right?
Got it.
Um, right, and it's run almost like a traditional bus, very different from how Uber is traditionally. So nice design challenge. Then I took a sabbatical for 3 months, and I went to study. I went for a culinary education into London, Le Cordon Bleu, for 3 months, which was this year, no, last year, basically. So I came back right when the pandemic had hit. So I had amazing 3 months in London, and then I
Okay.
came back in April. Then I've been locked down, of course. Now I've been working on designing sign in and sign up for Uber, basically, and that's what my work is. So every time you sign out, you will start seeing changes. So that's what I'm responsible for. So that's like like briefly my journey. There's much more detail, but like trust me when I say that because I think I try to keep it short for the format, of course.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, definitely you can go on and on. I mean, that's what this whole call is about. The thing is about you only. So people love to hear all these experiences because, as I said, all of those people who are there watching, they like you are someone who is like in their dream, the future version of what they are, right? So they are finding every opportunity to relate with, oh yeah, I'm also like this. Hey, I'm also like this. Maybe in this situation I can do, right? So the more you tell about your story, the more points people get in terms of how they can relate with themselves, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so definitely few of the things which I could note about what you said. Definitely, first I wanted to ask about traveling to different countries, right? So while I mean, I'll have two parts of the question, right? Because that was one of the very interesting things about what you told. First part of the question is, yeah, how did it feel to travel to every country as a designer and all? Yeah, that's one part. But the second part is, why did you have to travel? How are things different in different countries? As a, how are users different? So more in terms of the UX behind multiple places and people, right? And
Yeah.
designing multiple backgrounds. So more insights into that, and we can. It's something which really I cannot ask many people because only those people who have this exposure I can really ask. So I really wanted to dwell into that, right?
Yeah, no, that's a pretty interesting question, I would say. Well, I'll get to the first part of your
Okay.
question, which is also more interesting in my view. uh, in my view, it's not just being a designer and traveling. I think it's just being a person and traveling, right? And
Okay.
trips with work are very different than leisure trips, right? I think leisure trips are stressful in a way, because
Yeah.
you're going. I mean, of course, there are. I have places which I love and I know them really well, so it's all chilled out. But then leisure trips are also in a
And
way
how we
where,
want to chill. That's the problem with leisure trips. Plan how we want to chill, right?
yeah, right, and it is like, for example, if I'm going to a new country altogether, right? I'm a foodie, so I want to eat at every place possible, right? Like whatever this place is known for. And then I'm not much of like a sightseeing person, but like just a food list can keep you occupied, right? And sometimes we do get exhausted at an end of a trip, right? Like, I think it's a thing. But like when you're traveling with work, I think your exposure to people is much higher because
Okay.
you've gone to learn about people, right? So that definitely shapes you as a person because you are trying to learn about many more perspectives that you are aware of today, right? And I think that definitely changes you as a person. And to answer your second part of the question,
Yeah.
which is about how are these users different? I would say it's a unique situation for Uber. I
Okay.
wouldn't say necessarily everyone needs to travel, right? Like, I'm just going to put it out to design, right? Like, I think that's not something that you need to do, like you to research, right? Like, I think for Uber, if you imagine, right? Like, I think we are like at an intersection of a digital and a physical world, if you would imagine, right? And our digital world is much smaller and the physical world is much bigger, right? Because you requested an Uber for like perhaps 2 minutes, but you're spending like 30 minutes in the car, which,
Okay.
if you think about it, the experience is much larger inside the car, much larger on the physical side of things. So it's very
Correct.
difficult to ignore the physical side of the world. And that is why, um, when we travel, I think the reason why we traveled more was because we wanted to make sure we understand the physical part of the world, much closely. To give you an example,
Uh-huh.
now people bring this up all the time to me. It's like, I request an Uber and they call me and they're like, your destination, where is your destination? And then they cancel. Uh, and then I'm like, and they're like, why don't you fix this in India? And I'm like, we try our best to fix these things. But the reality is, if you take Bangalore as an example, right? Um, the culture has started where it was so difficult to get an auto, right? If you imagine before Ubers, you would go to an auto and be like, I want to go to, I don't know, Indranagar, right? And they'll be like 500 rupees, but it's 2 kilometers. So it's the humans that shape the experience, right? I mean, it's a platform's responsibility to also change the experience, but in the end, it's also the humans, right? So, but same problems don't happen in the US or anywhere else in the world, actually,
Totally.
right? So I
Yes.
think
Yes.
so that way, when we are traveling, I think we are trying to learn the landscape a bit better, and that
Wow.
just helps us, design, things better. I would say, for example, now when designing for Uber Life, right? I think our our focus was Brazil, Mexico, and India, right?
Okay.
Now, for most designers, and I'm not kidding, people have quoted this multiple times. They're like, if you're designing for Brazil, it'll work for India, or if you're designing for Mexico, it'll work for Brazil. More than that, right? Like I think more people are like, if you're designing for Brazil, it should also work for Mexico. Like at least I disagree with that for Uber, right? Like even though they have similar set of problems, there is there is still a lot different, right? Like for example, if you think about India, we are a developing country and developing economy, but some parts of our country are like way ahead than other parts, like our data situation, right? Like the after Geo came in, like we have all this 4G thing happening where people are buying 10 GB for 20 rupees, right? But Brazil is still in that world where they are paying $10 for 500 MB. Our payment system with UPI is like, in my view, it's like one of the world's most advanced payment system, which
Okay.
is right. So it's crazy, right? Like so, though the problems are same, but there are few nuances where one country has either progressed or still are demoted, like in a way, right? And I think that's where I think for us traveling had made a lot of sense. Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Makes sense. I mean, so tell me one thing. So when you gave that auto example or cab example, right? Right, on the way people behave on the road, the way people negotiate, or things like that are like pretty much different. So it's about core behaviors people exhibit in multiple countries, right? Now, first thing about it is, how did you guys research, or how did you guys understand, like, yes, maybe there is a research team or whatever, but there needs to be a perspective or the belief in the team itself to actually get the research done, or at least frame things for research to be done, right? And the second part is, how did you make sure that the research was translated into the product and people could find it usable in their own country, right?
Yeah.
Now, so should I put it short? I need to say,
No, no, it makes sense.
yeah, about the
Um,
research and how the research was translated. This is, yeah, please, your perspectives there. Or you can tell the company's perspectives as well. I don't know, but whatever you know can really help, because in multiple situations where people work, they get to understand about one set of users, and a lot of times we go with hypothesis because we also relate with that set of users, and the hypothesis mostly gets validated, and like either or other changes happen. But in an international scenario, the hypothesis might get blown away by what we actually thought and what actually got validated, right? So
yeah, no, you're right. Well, to answer your first question, right? I think for us, I think research has been a very very important part of the process, and not just for design. It's also for product,
mhm.
uh, which is crazy. I've not seen that happen anywhere else. Our researchers are work more closely with product managers than even designers. Like they work closely with us, but they also work very closely with product managers. So it's
Okay.
kind of interesting that uh, all of us are like spending a lot of time before actually even deciding to research, right? I think we look at data that already exists, we look at research that already exists, and only when we have an unknown that we don't know about is when we actually go about go about actually doing research, right? Now once that has been decided, we spend a lot of time really uh, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Yes, go
Okay,
ahead.
yeah, your video froze. So basically, only when we know that this is what this needs research is when we all get together and we make sure that all our hypothesis is in place. So sometimes our researchers will organize these jams where like everyone writes down all the hypotheses that they have, and I think it's so important that everything is written at that point, right? And I think after that is when we kind of look at bucketing that information and making sure like all the right hypotheses are in place. And I think it's just a process. It's just a diligent process. Like you could either just skip it but when you do it, it's like super deep and it's a lot of work. And I think I think I would say it's an amazing thing that we do that work, right? I think it's really really important.
Got
Once that is in place, is when our research plan is made, and the questions are in place. Researchers will put out questions. Everyone, all of us will look at those questions. We will understand if these questions are making sense
it.
or are pointing to the hypothesis that all of us had agreed on, right?
Okay.
Right? And only when that sort of comes together is when we actually go and do research. Now, another nice thing about research here at Uber is like we uh, try to get as many people into the field as possible, right? I think you could do research and read the learnings. It's not going to be the same, right? I think when you are in the field, I think what happens to you unknowingly and what changes you unknowingly is actually makes a lot of sense, right? I think actually is why research is so useful. So to give you an example, right? I think for me. Every time I meet a user, I think something about how I think about, let's say, that hypothesis changes. Now, before
Okay.
even the research report comes out, I think at least in my mind, being in front of so many users, I found and made a perspective, right? And that's just really important in my view when there is research, right? If a research is happening, at least the core members of the team need to tune in and actually listen to the voice. Because when you read the research, I think a lot cannot be translated, right? I think only text won't suffice for that sort of an experience. And to answer your second question, like um, how do we make sure that the research is actually getting translated,
Correct.
right? Now, uh, it depends, right? Like I think if you disagree, but like the most amount of control that is there in a product is not designers, is not product managers, it's actually engineers, right? Now it's a reality, right? And
Yes.
uh, I think uh, we can give our briefs and we can put as much pressure as we want to do our P0s and P1s and whatnot, but like in the end, like if something is too complex, people won't go the extra mile if they don't understand why it is needed.
Correct.
So one thing I do at least is like rather than going like too much like personas, what we do is basically I take all the learnings and create like just one persona, right? Like, and it does not work for every scenario, but like in some scenarios it worked for me where I'll be like, hey, this is our user, and I'll talk about that user with every engineer possible, right? I'll be like, hey, we met this user in Brazil, and they had this, and they had these problems, and they were facing this, and like using that user as a brand, I've like kind of taken those learnings with everyone. And we had this user that I created for Uber, like which is called Maria, and basically everyone knew Maria in a way that as if Maria was sitting with us, and I think that really helped because it was just easy to explain. Like sometimes they'll be like engineers will be like, we can't do this. I'll be like, no, Maria really needs it, and they'll be like, yeah, it kind of makes sense. I relate with the story that you told me.
Makes
So
sense. Makes sense.
the moment humor comes into the picture, I think even like all of us as a team like feel like putting that effort because you're really like making a
Got
difference, right?
it.
And that's how we kind of make sure that they
Makes
are
sense.
seen in the group, right?
Yeah. So totally. So definitely, what happens? I can also relate so much with what you're trying to say. What happens is the prod typically when this the product roadmap is set or maybe the spec is set, what typically happens is sometimes the individual aspect of that particular problem is really dealt when they try and like it naturally happens that the perspective of the user, the whole perspective of the user is lost sometimes, right? And that's when I similarly relate bringing in perspectives, maybe not exactly using user names to a persona, but definitely sometimes bringing in some journeys, right? Hey, you are thinking about this screen, but remember how the person actually traveled from there to here, right? And coming about journeys, when I'm thinking of that, now Uber has this very like Uber is one thing where the users or the customer's journey doesn't really is not completely only digital, right? But the journey has both offline and the online experience, and that really
Yeah.
surprises me because Uber has done it very well. I mean, it's so seamless. I mean, obviously there were a lot of iterations in the way they have done, but do you think you can add some perspectives into? Maybe I could put the question in that way. You at Uber, can you give guidance to a lot of people who might be working on these products, which where they need to consider both the online and the offline or the journey of the user or the customer based on the business, right? Some perspective there. Should I make
Yeah.
it more clear, or do
No, no,
you?
it makes sense. It does make
Yeah,
sense. Oh, well,
yeah,
I think that's actually a very good question, and I think more and more products are coming into that
correct.
sort of a realm, right? That space where, if you take food delivery, Swiggy and Zomato, Uber Eats as an example,
Mhm.
that's also a lot of like physical world stuff happening. Where yes, you're ordering from a restaurant, but someone is actually making your food, and someone is actually picking it up and dropping it to your house, and you're actually meeting that person. Or like I've been using a lot of these micro mobility platforms, where you can rent a scooter, or right. And I think yes, you're booking it on an app, but you're still like going and using a physical product. So I think it's a very relevant question for this time, to put it, to be honest. And the way I would think about this, and a way I would say like we do at Uber, is like,
Uh-huh.
I think just knowing the space you are operating in, and the users really well. There's just no shortcut to it, right? I think there'll always be data that is available, but I would say the more successful and the more like design driven a company is when you have more user data, right? Like, and what I mean by that is like, not statistical data, right? And you have all the insights, and you actually really know about your user, and you know the personas that you're working on.
Correct.
To give you an example, right? I think with Uber also, um, for example, cancellations, right? It's a pretty important part of the experience, which
Hmm.
happens very often. Now in the US, uh, we charge a cancellation fee if someone is 2 minutes late, but
Uh-huh.
in India we sometimes let them go even if it's more than five, because like the if you think about the real world here, uh, we have like so much traffic happening, the driver could actually be stuck, right? Or even from a user point of view, right? Like, uh, even if it's saying 4 minutes, it can actually take much longer.
Okay.
So just to paying more like attention to those experiences, is how I would put like, uh, and a problem space like a digital plus physical interface can be looked at. Spend more time understanding the physical world, right? I think the digital world is pretty sorted. Uh, Putting together an experience is not that hard these days. Like, let's be honest, right? Like, I think we can all rely on behaviors that people already know, and it's actually better to design uh, on behaviors that people actually know, and create a product, a flow that works. But what will
Got
actually fail is when the flow comes in action into the real world. uh, and
yes.
I think that's where, like, I think the physical world, and paying attention to that, and making tweaks for different regions,
Got
is how I would say, like, we at least tackle the same problem in Uber. Does that
yes.
answer?
Yes, definitely, definitely. Because added to that complexity, what I feel is a company like Uber, which has such international presence, right? How much ever it wants to, how much ever it is right to build individual experiences for individual countries, it is also important as a company to have the scale of consistency, right? I mean, sorry, if you the company wants to scale, it needs to be consistent at multiple levels. It needs to find out all those things which at core are similar, right? Or else you'll have to run multiple companies in multiple different countries, and you want to change something. you can't really, because it is so much dependent on every country doing different things, right? But that's something which I'm realizing as
Yeah,
I'm.
unless you are designing for China, right? I think everything else is cohesive in a way, right? Like I think there are parts and elements that come together to make an experience.
Correct, 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 correct. So that's one thing. Before I move off from these international related questions, because I'm so excited, there is something which I wanted to ask is in terms of did you experience any, so you can tell this from personal or professional experiences, is about culture shocks. So, for example, so in my previous company, we had one intern from China, and one very simple culture shock I had was, so I was just trying to teach how to eat with the hand. And she was like, how to eat? Like, should I hold like this? Right? Hold like this. And then I kind of realized that, hey, we have never realized that we actually take food like this, reverse it, and use our opposite thumb to actually push food into our mouth. And I was like, oh, I never realized it. I've been doing it right from my childhood. Right?
Unknowingly, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but we never realized like 4 to 5 steps in what we are doing, picking food in our mouth, right? But when I was looking at, when they were not able to do, that's when I realized, oh, so much UX is there in the way we eat, right? But anyway, added to that, there are a lot of cultural shocks like this. I mean, there's some cultural differences which make us realize about us and them as well, right? In a way which I just remembered, so I just shared that example. But
Yeah.
anything which you might want to share, significant or even insignificant, is still relevant.
I I can think about like some of my stupid moments for sure.
Okay.
uh, I in I'm not gonna name the person, but in the US, I was working there for 2 weeks or something. I was basically, gone for like some meetings, reviews, etc. in a US office, and like one of these mornings on a Monday, right? Like one of my friends, who's also a designer. Of course, it's a on a Monday morning. It's a busy morning. People are going into meetings and whatnot. And he comes and he's like, "Hey, what's up?" And then, I'm generally like, okay, if someone asks me what's up, I'm like, okay. He's like, "What's up? How's your weekend?" And like, I like really like stopped him and like explained him about my weekend, but like that does not really happen. People just like, hey, what's up? Like, hey, what's how cool, man? How you? And you just like pass, right? And this is like, I'm like making him sit and like explain all about my weekend, which is really really funny. And I was like, oh, okay, this is it's a casual ask. It's not, we because for India, right? Like I think in our office culture, it's very different. We sit for
Correct.
chai. We spend time during lunch breaks. It's not the same in the US. People don't have that much time. Uh,
Got it.
and
I,
it's like,
I can imagine that guy, like, is he really explaining about his weekend?
I
Oh,
know, I know. He has that like,
yeah.
he had that poker face and he was like, well, I didn't really mean to. So he didn't ask any questions. Like, hey, nice, good for you. And he's and that's and he's like a good friend of mine. So I kind of
Got
understood that
it.
there's something. And another one was like another friend of mine, a really close friend of mine, which I can name, a friend called Yost. He's also a designer at Uber. And he sits out of Amsterdam. I was there, and he was like sitting right opposite me, and he had his headphones on, right? And I think we were working. So I was like disturbing him once or twice or maybe thrice at one point, and then then one point in time he's like, "Can we talk after 5?" And I was like, "What?" And for me, like I'm sitting with my colleagues, we just like talk to each other right all the time. But like he's like someone who is like really focused all the time, and he's like when he's working, he does not want to be distracted. So I was like, "Oh, okay, this is how it sort of works." And he's like a really good friend of mine, so it's that made it even harder for me. So yeah, these two
Okay,
for sure.
okay. Interesting, interesting. So, yeah, I'm really liking how this session is going. I mean, though we have some set of prepared questions, then I was yeah, man, like why casual questions? Like, and this guy brings so much exposure from all these things, right? So, Very good. So yeah, next thing I wanted to ask is about. Uh, so how do I put it?
You can ask whatever you want, man. Don't worry, don't shy.
No, I'm just trying to frame the question. I'm just trying to frame the question because what I mean to say is, mm, how do you? Okay, now things like cab booking or multiple other experiences which Uber has built. Now, these are the experiences which people are traditionally doing, right? Traditionally were doing in a different way. Now, after Uber comes, or like in multiple places, like Uber is one example for this, but there are multiple businesses which literally translate a traditional experience into a digital experience, right? Now,
Mhm.
do you have some perspectives of this transition? Because definitely adoption is like maybe generally adoption, like they say this early adopters and there's this adoption curve or something. I also don't know completely, but it's like for any product which tries to translate existing behaviors to a new productized behavior, right? uh, it is challenging, and
Yep.
Uber is successful in this, right? Many companies also tried, but Uber is definitely successful in this, right? So maybe you might not have first hand worked on this translation of people from their existing behaviors to this new behavior, but if at all you had, or if you have some perspectives in that, please give us give us more insights, right? Anyway,
Yeah.
long short, again, just for the users, I know you understood, but viewers might not have understood because I was framing the question as I was speaking. Long question short is people transfer, people were using these experiences like cabs and all in a different way. After Uber came, they have shifted. What does a UX designer have to do to understand and provide this user experience in a product, right? Maybe that is a better way of asking the question.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, that's a fair question. Well, so I do have one story that I can think of.
Okay.
Right, I think Uber is definitely one example where something which was done in a different way traditionally,
Correct.
kind of has been completely shifted into something online and changes the behavior, but also the industry in a very different way. Right, I
Mm-hmm.
think if you think about it, I think that it's a huge change in the industry as well. Uh, Now, and it comes with a lot of responsibility if you think about it, right? I think
Yeah.
uh, there are pieces to it which are sometimes uncontrollable. So those are the nuances that definitely need to be taken care of. I could think of one time that this had happened, and this is a completely opposite story to what you have really asked. So it's not
Okay.
really it's like a non-answer, but I will still go ahead with it.
Definitely. Go
Uh,
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Please.
well, so recently, just for 2 months, I was basically working on designing Uber for seniors like 80 year, 70 year, 60 year people in the US. We spent we tried a lot for people to like go use our app, but like they are just not comfortable, right? Like they still are someone who are just going to phone call and book a ride for themselves, right? And that's something we have seen consistently, at least in the US, that people are, even though they are using phones, but they are like probably just using an iPhone and FaceTime uh, and
Uh-huh.
and and iMessage to message their kids, right? But like nothing else at all. Now that was a sort of like an opportunity for us to kind of enter that space, but like app was not the answer. Is what we figured, right? Like I think we made Uber Lite. We tried launching that. We have m.uber. We have Uber that we keep trying to make it better, right? But like for these people, like they don't associate. They have done this for so many years. They just don't associate calling a car and a cab like that. So we went into their world. So what we did is we actually launched a phone call. uh,
Oh,
but
okay.
but the phone call is actually powered by Uber, right? And
Hmm.
it's not traditional, right? Like if you imagine how a phone call of a cab would work, well, they have timetables and someone calls them and they're like, oh, this driver is free at that time and I'm gonna like get you that driver. But like for Uber, like we actually have such an advanced matching system, so we don't need that. So we
Correct.
actually like powered this phone call with this really advanced system, uh,
Wow.
right? Which I feel is like meeting your users where they are, right? Like you are not trying them to like learn something that they don't want to learn. So we are actually meeting them where they are comfortable. So it's still traditional, but it's modern in a way, right? And like it starts with you actually talking to a human and human like finding you a car, but on the Uber platform, to the system remembering your choices and then just like going uh, into the phone call and just like through your voice just saying where you want to go, right? Like I think kind of automated that experience, but like you start with a human being, and then you move into like a voice automated sort of a system. So it's
Correct.
a
Correct.
transition, but like, and it's technologically advanced. Like if you imagine like where they are actually talking to a computer, so in the way they are somehow using the app, but like the medium where they enter is what something that they are comfortable with. Yeah,
Awesome, awesome. Wow, wow. So, Anurag, I can't tell you, you know, how many new insights, how many like such good insights I'm getting from this because we rarely get to speak to someone who had these experiences. Very insightful. I am learning a lot. I am seeing a lot. But yeah, guys. Now what we'll do is we will take questions from multiple students. But before that, since you're seeing that we are trying to bring multiple UX experts, we're having these conversations, understanding how they work, what insights they bring, how they can relate with us, right? So as we are trying to do this, please support us by subscribing to this channel. Not really such a big thing, but definitely subscribe and hit the bell icon because whenever we go live, whenever we post anything, you can start watching it and be done with it, right? So with that, why like Anurag has been giving such wonderful answers. So let us have some comments on the chat, guys. Like, what do you feel? Are you feeling excited? Come on, say hell yeah in the chat. Come on, hell yeah if you're excited, if you're learning something. I want everyone who is watching to just, you know, completely burn the chat. So while I get you burning the chat, what we'll do right now is let me just look at some of those questions which students have been asking. So yeah, I think it takes some time for chat to get reflect over here. But yeah, so a bunch of questions. So let's start with a simple question first. I mean, I know everything can has perspectives, but a good UI product will be a good UX product as well. What is your view on that? Let me add some layer onto this. I kind of understand what he's asking, but uh, to add more fun, definitely Uber or maybe even say Twitter, definitely their visuals are also great. I think this person is referring to the visuals part of it when he calls out good UI because real UI has much more time to it than actual visuals. We know it because when we build it. But anyway, I think most people are referring to the good visuals, but Uber does it pretty well, right? But on the experience side as well, it is pretty strong. So, first, definitely you can directly answer this question, then get to some perspectives on the importance of marrying the visuals with good experience.
makes sense. Well, I think for me to answer your question, Jitin, I think they go hand in hand. I don't think they are too different things any for me. For example, we don't have, I'm sure for Anudeep as well, we don't have that role anymore where there is like a UI designer and a UX designer. Right? I think
Yes.
we call everyone a product designer. So from a role point of itself, I think we have kind of moved to a world where it's all UX design. You're basically designing an experience. So even according to me, a UI is also an experience, right? When you're looking at something, you are feeling something, right? You're tapping on it.
Yes.
So that's itself is an experience. But to go very very tactical, if you say the visual versus how it performs, right? I feel like I would any day tell you that how it performs is bigger, unless like the US, like the visuals are really really shitty, right? Like like if you have if you have made a button which is like this small and it's smaller than your thumb size, but like if you have made something clean, I know so many apps who don't have the best of the best visual people, but they have the basics. They have made a great experience because they cared about the flow, they cared about how the user goes through that journey.
Yes.
So no, a good visual won't be necessarily be a good experience. Um, but however, I would say visuals are important. I'm not saying visuals aren't important. I think a clean UI itself um, is a great experience. Now, again, like I just I'm interchangeably using that word, right? I think a clean
Yes.
UI itself is a great experience because you can, when you don't have a lot of cognitive load looking at the screen, right? I think that itself is makes a user's job easier in choosing what they want to do. So I think, uh,
Totally.
but to go back to your question, I think like good visual does not mean a good experience for sure.
But yes, so definitely such a wonderful perspective you have given, and this matches so much of the perspectives which we generally talk, right? Definitely in this channel and multiple places which we talk, like, hey, why are you even polarizing this, right? Why are you polarizing this? Like, are you doing UI? Are you doing UX? Oh, did you just define UX as not UI? Oh, so this was happening so much, right? Like, why do you have to make it like 0 or 1? Experience has everything. Whatever you see, feel is also experience. Whatever is there behind it is also experience. The way you are able to use it is also experience. So why do you have to take one part out of it and just put it on two different ends, right? And that's it's like, but the thing is, maybe it's like, to give one more answer, I usually give this doctor's example. Is like, uh, maybe today I'll give a different example. It's, let's say, cooking, right? Now if someone comes and says, as a chef, what is very important, the decoration of the food, or the taste of the food, or the way I cook it, and what I cook, it's like everything. It's not that you're always making food like, did you eat basic necessity over, then done. It's not like that also, right? We are humans. We want good experiences, even when the way it looks and the way it tastes is also important. But that doesn't mean you don't even do the fundamentals right. It only looks good, tastes good, but it is not at all healthy, right? So you can't really separate all of them and put them into polarizing ends. And I only do this or only do that, right? So guys, UI likes matter. So
Yeah, I mean, delight in my view is like the most understated thing, right? Like, if
totally, totally.
anything that you look at it can like make you feel better, I think that's just like, or changes your mood. I think that's just
Yes.
job. Like it's you exceeded the expectation, right? I think that's
Yes, yes. So, so Jitin, I think you got good perspectives. It's just about focusing only on the visuals, but not really worrying about anything else, is as dangerous as not only focusing on research or something, but not doing anything else to deliver the experience for the customer or the user, right? All of these are dangerous because you're not really worried about the experience person is using, but you're just worried about one part of it, right? So definitely we can dwell more into it a little later. So let us look at more other questions which people have. Huh. We have general questions like, uh, what is the future of UX design in next years and things like that. But I'll first pick some good questions, specific questions. Um, Okay, there's a very tricky question. I am trying to understand which set of users you would prefer to design. Ones whose behavior is more or less the same, or ever-changing dynamic groups. I'm thinking.
Yeah, no. Which set of users you would prefer to design? Um, well, I think I kind of understand where Parth is coming from. Uh, I feel like uh, if I have to take an example of this is like
Huh?
you would say like, are we designing for a one set of audience, or are we designing for a multiple set of audiences? Right. I think
Okay.
now you
Or
could take. Yeah.
or a set of audience who are always changing, right? I think that's
Yep.
the kind of angle this part is trying to give. But yeah, go ahead. You go ahead with
No.
what right now. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it. I would say like, at least for when we are talking about, there are products which are designed for a certain set of audience, and then there are products which are designed for uh, all types of audiences, right? And
Yes.
I think now with most products we are trying to like uh, be as global as we could, right? And also like for all age groups as much as we can, right? So I think I especially love designing for a multitude of audiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, and when we talk about like changing behaviors uh, in a particular audience, um, I would say that could only happen when the audience is also like progressing, right? For example, if we say uh, like the 18-year-olds, right? Like I think it kind of it's an ever evolving audience because there are always newer things happening. But I think it's just like being on top of what's happening, right? And what's happening in the newer trends, and what
Mm-hmm.
is what is it that people are preferring. I think that's does that do you think that answers the question?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it definitely sounded interesting, but Parth, I think all of us would answer that. You know, really care about users, you will have to care the way they change. It's not that hey, I'll only design for those users who don't change. Then yeah, or that's why telephone booths are gone, right? That's the moment cell phones came. Now I'll only make a better telephone booth. I'll not do anything for a cell phone. Then okay, go ahead, right? So
Yeah, I think the audiences are evolving all the time, right? And I think
yes.
if you think about it, uh, especially with, let's say, usage of cell phones, right? I think and the newer technology keeps coming in. The refresh rates of screens are higher, or the
Yes.
screens are always pushed out as much as possible. So if we are not, understanding those changes and not reacting to those changes, I think that's
Yes.
definitely a failure as a
So I think we are more excited to welcome the change people are having because that's when our role also becomes challenging, right? We want to know
Yeah,
about more people and we want
that's
to
why we have a job.
right. Awesome. So good one, Parth. Thank you for that. Good. I have one very good, and though generic, it's a very good question. This is from Pawan Kumar. It says, why certain companies come when there is already a company successful in the same domain, right?
Money,
Like,
money, Pavan Kumar, money.
the
No,
smooth answer that Pawan was like, what did he say? Money. But yeah,
no.
go
I
ahead.
mean, I could give a more intellectual answer, but I think the reality is, wherever there is opportunity, everyone is trying to grab a bite, right? I think if you imagine, right, like I think every product that you can think of, right, like in any domain whatsoever, when it comes, it makes a huge change, and then people follow because they have innovated. And I'll go ahead and take Uber as an example, right? Like I think the matching algorithm and the matching of drivers to riders through a phone and internet has been invented, right? That's the basis of that. network to work. Now that's there. Like, once that invention has happened, like other people would jump into that opportunity because uh, now like they have paved the way, right? Like they've paved the path for others to actually like come take advantage of that. And I feel like uh, in the end, it does come about competition, and I feel like competition is generally healthy, right? I think it pushes both or even more like all of the people involved in the business to do better.
Correct. So, definitely. I mean, Pawan Kumar, to add to that, it's like, see, I tell you something in terms of a UX designer or in in the sense of how we provide experiences, right? Every UX designer or every team brings unique perspectives into how they solve problems. And there's nothing wrong in we attempting to solve the problem in a different way, right? So definitely later a lot of things play into the picture whether you succeed or not. Do you have the enough stamina in terms of money and all these things? But definitely as UX designers, I don't think we should restrict ourselves. Hey, that idea already someone has, already Reliance is doing, already Amazon is doing. I want to. No, that maybe your perspective they don't have. Maybe the way you will solve might make more sense, right? So definitely, guys. I mean, what the reason why I highlight this question is keep it away from your heads that someone is already doing it, so no use. No,
That's actually a pretty good answer, yeah.
right? So that's the word. So what was this? What was that product? I even forgot the name. Orkut. Orkut was already doing it. Facebook came. Facebook is already doing it. LinkedIn is there, right? The way people are solving those problems is different, and maybe yeah, as someone is saying in this chat, it's not just about having those ideas or starting something. It's all about executing those things, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, guys, I mean, that's a good point which came.
But the answer is still money, Pawan Kumar. Just know that.
Ultimately, that definitely matters, right? Who has the stamina to kind of stand and because see, the reason why money is one more thing is it takes something to build experiences, guys. I mean, it's not like why can't they do it? Why can't they do this? They understand, right? Like so frustrating. It takes money to build any experience. To do something in your own house, you have to spend so much money. So imagine a company doing it for large audience, like large set of users. It takes money. So ultimately, you like one more thing is you might want to provide the best experience for your children, right? But paisa to chahiye, right? So anyway, but yeah. Next, okay, one more question. Here it's by Ashwant. Uh, okay, what's your view on login system without password? What are successful alternatives for the same? So, uh,
Yeah.
are you comfortable in?
Happy to take it. Yes.
Yeah,
Well, I feel like most of the login systems are now passwordless, and I feel like I love that. I love that a lot because most of the login systems are phone number and OTP, right? I think both of
correct.
which are in your hand, which I think makes the whole experience much better. To actually start with, right? I think I'll actually take your question to another extent, right? I think previously every login system used to have email and password, right? If you remember. Yeah, you talked about Orkut, so I'll take you to Orkut, right? I think
Yeah,
if you were logging into Orkut to read your testimonials, you would enter an email and a password to get in, right? But I think over the time, to get to the larger set of users, we realized that email is something that not everyone uses, right? Like email is a thing that you use, I use, and some of us use because we are doing jobs which require it, right? But when I'm talking to Anudeep, like outside of this call, right, it'll be a WhatsApp message, right? So not everyone has. So we moved to phone number. So that was a huge one, right? Which I loved. Um, and after that, also, I think with so many services in play right now, you probably have 30, 40, 50. I may have 50 services that I use. Right now, you don't want to be like it's just so difficult to remember password, right? It's just cognitive load
Totally.
uh, to remember passwords. So I feel like this combination of like something that reaches your phone is just beautiful. But uh, I would imagine the future is just your phone, right? Like the fact that you have that phone and the fact that Face ID is already in place, so we are already seeing some of that. But the fact that you are there is good enough for you to log in, right? I think that's where the future is, according to me. I think, and we are also working towards that future, and it's just beautiful. Because I would imagine. It to be invisible, right? Like if I'm using something, why do I have to tell you that it's me, right? You should know that it's me, right?
Correct.
Most phones are also going to have fingerprint in the screen, right? Like all Android phones already have. So I think the future is definitely moving away from password, and I feel like most of the work is already done. It's just the work scaling up to everyone.
Yes, 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 yes. You said something about login experience somewhere, right?
Yeah,
Login something.
yeah. I am right now redesigning login and sign up for Uber. Yes.
Oh, any
Cannot talk
insights
much.
there? Any
Cannot talk
insights?
much about exactly what I'm doing, but like I'll tell you one that we launched recently.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so with COVID, a lot of people weren't using Uber, right? And the people probably deleted their apps because, of course, no one is going anywhere during COVID. But now people are starting to come back. So my work was to
Correct.
actually like have a seamless way for them to get in. So we use your phone, uh, uh, you know, as your device ID to actually get you into the Uber experience, right? So when you actually come into Uber and you have uninstalled it and you reinstall it again, like you will already see your name there, right? Like, and you don't have to enter password. You just like say that this is me, and you
Correct.
just go. So I think that's a good example of like how like already like we are trying to like get rid of password overall, and it's just making
Makes sense.
login
Makes
login and
sense.
sign up as smoother as possible.
Got it. Got it. Wow. So very good perspectives there, Anurag. So guys, come on! I need more support on the chat. What's happening?
I think people are asleep. Maybe it's too late.
No, no. We people are listening. We know how much engagement happens.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, it's
I,
just,
I think what's happening is they're so much into the answers. They're like contemplating so much, right?
I mean, if I were, my camera were off, if my camera was off, I would be probably like sitting on the bed answering your questions. But like, my, unfortunately, my camera is on. I put on this shirt and like sit.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So
Someone is saying check Slido.
yeah, that's where they keep their questions and things like that. So, but anyway, our backend team is anyway getting those things. Huh. But yeah, actually, we have one question. Hmm. So I think this person is giving. Let's see. Once the driver gets booking, he'll call back and try to know the destination. If it's not in his favor, he rejects. This keeps happening. Okay, good. What's the solution for it?
I mean,
I
I
think you
can
should
tell you, I can tell you
become a
how
good
to.
before you give answers, Alesh, become a good UX designer, join Uber, then they'll give you the answer for this. But
Yeah.
anyway, go ahead.
I can tell you like how it can be solved, but like I'll also tell you why we haven't done it so far. Right? I think like a easy way to do this would be like, and I think we do that on our autos already. Is like, show the drivers their destination, right? Right, and
Auto, right?
when
I figured
yeah,
out
we do
auto.
that on auto. Yeah, we do
Because
that on auto.
got it.
But
Go ahead. Go
yeah, I think it's one way of like doing it, right? Because you can basically say, hey driver, like this is a booking that's coming, and and if do you want it or not, right? Like, do you want to go in this direction or not?
ahead. Correct.
Uh, that's an easy way to do it. and then you will probably have someone who accept who actually wants to go, right? But the problem is like Uber is just not one person trying to get a car and get somewhere, right? Like I think it's a much complicated system where all of us are there are so many people who are trying to get to their destinations. So we do have a marketplace there, right, where we are trying to make sure that the whole system is running smoothly. Now, if everyone is like deciding where they want to go, right, like uh, probably every driver wants to go to airport all the time, right? Like they only accept the airport rides, or they won't accept airport rides. So I think it just, for a lack of a better word, fucks up the system. But I mean, we are working on it, but it's a difficult one. Like if you remember, I said in the start, this is a problem that we primarily see only in Bangalore, and in many fewer cities, even in India. But the problem is in India and like nowhere else in the world. Interesting, but also like much more in Bangalore, uh, right? And if you imagine, right, Bangalore is a place where airport is super far, uh,
Yes.
and a good percentage of trips are airports, right? So it just changes the whole dynamic uh, towards how people approach, using Uber as a driver. And some of these things are human, right? Like I said, we we had these auto wallahs who would not take us anywhere for like 500 rupees, like less than 500 rupees, right? So those behaviors trickle down, right? So rather than finding a solution, right, like I said, it's a more to do with how the people are and understanding those people. And I think, of
Correct.
course, we continue to work on these problems, but like it's not as easy as I was making it sound like before, right? Like just changing and giving them a reservation, and that's why I explained to the complexity. So no, I don't really have an answer, to be honest. After saying all of this.
No, no, it's not easy. Actually I contemplated about this many times, especially when driver they ask you, right, and they like nice aap cancel kar do. I'll be like aap cancel kar do, like no sab, whatever, and I'm like after whole discussion, like, why should I waste time? I'll cancel, right? And there was like, what is a better way to solve it? Now, if I'm like show them, then all drivers will be like reject, 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 and I'll not get any cab, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
the
don't
people
show.
who dread to go to the airport just because our airport is so far, right?
Yeah,
And that makes it really hard because everyone who goes to the airport needs a ride back from the airport to
correct,
come back, because they can't just like burn that much amount of fuel, just like drop you and come back, right?
correct,
And that creates a congestion in the airport as well, because not as many people are coming back. So it's
correct.
just a very it's a much
Yes.
difficult problem, Shailesh, to be honest. But
But one perspective which helped me here is we are one side of the users for Uber, right? We are like we are as users of the Uber's app where we are traveling in the cabs, we are one set of users, but cab drivers also humans,
yeah,
right? It's not that, hey, why is Uber not doing this feature because like this, but they're also humans. They have to make sure they do everything because the other side of people are also humans, right? Now, but this is one very interesting perspective because what happens, let us say you're using digital products like Netflix. Now, uh, I just brought Netflix because you're only interacting with the product per se. It's not really like a human,
yeah,
right? Now, that's a little different. But in products like Uber, you're interacting with humans on the other side, right? And
yeah,
it's a very complicated problem, like Uber or Swiggy or multiple places where they try and do a lot of things for the end user experience, but sometimes they have to make sure that they don't really compromise on the humans on the other side as well, right?
yeah,
Because people seldom don't relate the other side as humans because you order food on Swiggy, on the door, you have food, and you completely miss out on the entire human angle which led you to the food coming on the time, and we are like so frustrated about it, right? So as UX designers, it becomes very important, guys, to understand all these things and solve for these what do you say, sensitivities as well, right? So very good perspective, guys. What we'll do now is, though we like have 15 minutes, what we'll do is we'll take a few questions directly from the YouTube live chat as well if they come. Then the last 5 minutes we'll have a fun session, a fun surprising session. Uh, so where we'll see a lot of engagement from YouTube guys as well. So let me check if there are any questions on the YouTube chat, and if they are not, I'll still go back to the students' questions which we have, right? Uh, yeah, so I think we have a good question here. Some Salaskus
That's a
2.0.
user.
Anyway, says, what feature did you introduce to educate the user on during COVID time? Uh,
Uh, I'm assuming it's posted around the time when I was speaking about my people coming back from
yeah,
uh, right. I think at that point, right, like there's not every feature that needs education, right? Like this feature itself is such a delight, right? Imagine you delete your app and you come back and you're thinking, how to enter my phone number and all of that. And suddenly like, hey, welcome back, right? I think that itself is a delight. But again, like it's not a fly in the air, right? Like I think it's a very well thought, right? It only happens if it's you on your device and through the same Play Store and in the same phone, right? I think
right.
uh, if all those combinations are not true, so it wouldn't happen. But if it is true, then it is our responsibility to like make best use of that experience and create delight out of it, right? And there's really no education required in that time.
And that's the beauty, right? In a lot that good design is always invisible, but uh, as UX designers, you need to also see these guys. Like when he was saying about that login experience, right? Now, if you again installed, you saw your name and you went and you didn't even think that, you wouldn't even realize that we had to do all these things to actually get you the experience, right?
Yeah.
It's maybe trying to prevent your bad experience of you not having a no dude. I'll have to log in all these things and like not ab nahi hoga, like I will do it next time or something. Like Uber has thought of all that, but you don't see merit because you're already having the good part over there, right? So it happens a lot, and we as UX designers, especially know that, and that's one very good perspective, guys. Is it's not about always making those grand changes, grand, totally visible changes, or things like that. And definitely that's when it is called out. But mostly UX design is not really always about that. It's a lot of invisible things which happen in the back, which are always giving good experiences to us. So that's a really good perspective, Anurag. So yeah, then let's see what practice. Yeah, we have. I'm not really touching those normal questions which we get. I'll put this question, but give your take on this. But uh,
Yeah.
the reason
I
I
read
put
it
it
already.
is because of this word tweaks, which not so clear. But let me hear your perspective. So some notable UX tweaks to improve driver engagement vis-a-vis user app.
Um, I think, at least I believe, right? I think Uber is overall a very, very driver friendly sort of a company, right? And I think some of the things that we have done to make the user and driver engagement much better. Uh, it works. Some of these features might work much better outside of India, but like I still want to give you an example of just the driver profiling that we did recently, where we tell you about the driver, not just the rating, but also like uh, uh, um, what are the languages that this can speak, or any positive feedback that someone else has given about that, right? And if I take it to the US, there are people who are painters and there are people who are artists and are actually driving Uber. So their profiles are even more like lucrative, and they and it just creates this human angle to the driver, right? Like Anudeep was saying initially, that they are human at the end of the day, right? Like they're not just taking you from one place to the other, right? Like they're also human beings themselves. So we are trying to bring a more of a human angle to the whole experience, and I think that is one good example that I could think of.
Got it. Got it. So, and one more interesting question we have is, uh, rather than static UI, is it true micro animations are giving life to apps?
Well, I said delight is a thing, right? Now, it's not something that you have to do, right? Like it's an additional. You are overperforming, which is great, right? But like micro interactions are in a way, one creating a lot of delight. Two, at a lot of places also adding value to how an experience performs. So I am very pro, and I love those micro interactions and animations.
Correct.
But I try to use them in a way where they are more functional.
Yes,
And
yes.
I see a lot of people are trying to use them in a way where they are more delightful. I think there are two camps. I'm more of a useful micro animation sort of a camp,
Correct.
but there is also like a delight, and there could be both, right? I'm not saying it's only one. So yeah, pick your camp.
Totally, totally in line with what you're saying, because uh, very simple, guys. If you're doing it for the sake of doing micro interactions, then it doesn't make sense. It definitely has to make sense for the users, right? Now, as Anurag very much said, there are two ways of doing this. There are delight. There are these micro animations or animations which give delight. But on the other hand, animation or micro animations can be very much well used to enhance the experience, enhance the interaction in multiple cases, because even in real world things are animated or things are continuous, or like the multiple principles why animation makes enhances usability and all. Of course, we also spoke about this in the last episode, but it's again, guys, are you doing it because it enhances the experience for users, or are you doing it because of making something fancy, right? Now that really matters. So,
Yeah, I mean, don't go overboard. There are examples where people
correct.
went overboard. But then, as much as you're trying to, like Anudeep said, right? Like as much as you're trying to mimic the real life, right? I think that definitely always works, and it's just like is a reminder to the user, and like you can use that to, create that sort of an experience that happens in real life.
So, next 2 minutes left before we go to rapid fire.
I want to answer one question before rapid
Yeah, please
fire.
go ahead. You can also
Someone
select.
said, yeah, so Madman said, why mid-level companies not following any design sprints? They look for design to be completed in a day, right? Well, I would say I want to answer this because I feel like this is very close to my heart. I don't think it's the companies, right? Trust me, every company you meet, go to Amazon, Uber, Google, wherever, right? People want the design yesterday, and you as a designer, it's your responsibility to create your own timeline. Imagine working with engineers. Engineers always have a timeline, and they're like, "This will take 2 weeks," and it's non-negotiable. Like we are like, "Hey, can you do it quicker?" No, it takes that much time. I think design needs to own up to that as well. Just because a Figma can create it, trust me, code can also be done in a day, but they do it because it's a responsibility, right? You write wrong code, it's gonna bite you back later. Design, if you do wrong design, it's also gonna bite you back later, right? So I think it's just us understanding our roles and like taking it to every company, really.
Totally, totally, totally. Um, uh, Madman, adding to what Anurag is saying, or anyone, let me tell you one thing, guys. While it is very important to establish why design takes time, right, which Anurag was adding his perspective about, yes, that is there. But it is our onus to give them the trust that time spent on design gives them results, right? Now, Let's say you hire a maid and it's like, hey, can you clean this house? Maid says, I need 5 days for it. Like, what are you talking? 5 days? What do you mean? It is the onus of the maid to explain you why does it even take 5 days for you to trust that someone can take 5 days to clean a house because you're thinking it can be done in a day, right? That's what you've seen for your full life, and that's what these companies have seen. They just haven't seen impact coming because of it taking time. And trust me, guys, if you take the onus, if you prove to the companies that, hey, you know what, I spent this time, I built an experience, and now you're having this impact, companies are more than willing to give time. And that is how companies evolve and give time. Now, you can't expect them to read some articles or something and then they giving time by themselves. They need trust, right? They need to trust that impact can come. So it is both sides, guys. I mean, it is again, are we only here to blame the companies that they're not giving me time? Or are we really taking the ownership that I want to deliver good experience to users, so I'll make sure my company understands that I really want to take some time to build a good experience. So choice is yours, guys. Right? So but anyway, that was really good. Now, now we are in the last 5 minutes of this session. Probably now Anurag kind of understood why this weird timing. He was asking me, dude, what is this 9:30 to 11 like? We're like, so what? We were initially planning 1 hour. Then we were like, there are different sets of audiences which we were like wanted to take questions from, and
Yeah, I can't imagine where the time went, really.
yes, and the thing with 1 hour is like the moment you expand into some topic, you're like, no, time is getting over, and is getting over. So that half an hour gives that buffer to like, hey, go ahead, speak about it.
Yeah.
So, so very good. So, okay. Hmm. Okay, so now let's do this fun thing, guys. So, all of you in the chat, what we want you to do is come up with questions, quick questions to Anurag, where he can give one word answers, not thinking a lot about your answer. So, let's do a live rapid fire, right? But before that, let me ask you to subscribe and hit the bell icon. And also, as you are putting on the chat, you can also notice that whatever you felt, whatever you learned, you can also comment on this video because the live chat like is not really visible once the thing is over, right? So why don't you also comment, because there's a lot we learned in this call, like so many international perspectives about how we understand users in multiple places, and like so many things happened in this call we didn't even realize the time. So why don't you comment your learnings, that a lot of people who might want to watch this video might look at the comments and say, hey, we learned all these things, very interesting, let's watch, right? So please do that. So while that, let's wait for the rapid fire questions.
Looking forward to it.
And also, meanwhile, follow Anurag Arora on Instagram. Let me just put the ID for you guys. Uh,
Already up there, I think. Yeah.
yes, 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 yes,
It's just
yes.
the food side of my world. Thanks
Yes,
for
guys.
thanks for the
This
shout out.
guy has spent so much time with us, and we're not paying, guys. I'm not a rich guy to pay everyone. So, so we're not paying for this project, but I'm telling you, experts are really, really like time is really valuable. So it's really spending so much time for all of us to share all this knowledge and perspectives and all these things. So please also support them. But yeah, definitely follow Anurag Arora, double R. Okay, so don't end up following
We
some other.
already have we already have questions coming in.
So yeah, awesome. Yeah, quickly. What do we? So as I put it on the screen, Uber, Ola, or Swiggy?
Of course, you know the answer. Pass.
Uber it is. Figma or Adobe XD?
Figma any day.
Awesome. Your favorite country?
Brazil.
Brazil. Wow. Okay. Uber used service.
Didn't get it.
I also don't know.
Yes, Uber is the most used service. You could put it again
Good,
if you. I
good way to
use
take it. uh, New morphism? Like, there's option there. You're like giving one option and saying, like it, say it. Maybe new morphism, yes or no.
Well, I'm undecided on that. Yes, maybe. I think it's coming back.
Okay. Designing or cooking?
Oh, tough one. I think designing on the weekdays, cooking on the weekends.
Okay. Number of team members?
Seven at the time. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, Morning routine at work?
I chill these days, guys. It's work from home. I make
Chill.
chai in the morning, and I start working when I feel like.
Your favorite Uber feature?
It's something that no one uses, but there is there is this small when you request an Uber, there is this small button on the right, right next to where you see the number plate. It's to display like it's to display it to the driver basically. When you tap on it, the screen changes into like a solid color, and you can actually show it and wave it to a driver.
Yeah. That's such a good feature, man. I mean, like,
Yeah, but I don't know if people use it. I use it a lot.
yeah. I actually spoke about it in one different call about in such a crowded place. Like, you really need to consider all the journey to understand. But awesome. I really, I'll stop myself now because the time is up almost. But uh, bad question, but I'll still put it UI or UX? Watch the video, guys. Watch the video.
Come on, man. I think you have should be on the video.
Watch the video, you'll get the answer. So, yeah. So, I think okay, guys, I know that you guys have like a lot of questions to ask. Anurag has spent wonderful time with us. But yeah, Anurag, this was like amazing. So many insights we have learned from this call, right? And thank you so very much for being with us today, right? And sharing your insights. Anurag was like, dude, the camera, the lighting, and all. So we're like, dude, if content matters, if people will love you, right? I'm damn sure people love you a lot, right? So, guys, do we show some love for Anurag on the chat? And also, please comment on the video, okay? Commenting is different from the live chat which you're doing, guys. So if you have liked the session, please talk about some of the good learnings you had or some of the other questions and all. So make the comment session also live so that people who might want to watch will also find this interesting.
And I'm happy to take any questions outside of this video. Message on LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever. Yeah.
Or LinkedIn, maybe a lot of
Yeah.
people are tagging us on LinkedIn and asking questions. So you can always also tag and I, I I myself want to tag Anurag for multiple questions. So thank you very much, Anurag. Thank you so much. I mean, you have seen the happiness of me learning things from you. So that's the biggest thank you I can tell you. My
No,
face
man,
is
same here. It's thanks for being a great moderator. This was I didn't feel when we actually completed the whole hour and a half actually. Yeah.
awesome. So awesome. That's the end of the session today. Subscribe and hit the bell icon and keep following us for more and more episodes of Ask UX Experts as we bring more and more UX experts. Thank
Woohoo.
you.
Great. Awesome.